I'm David Crowley. I'm the writer and director of Gray State, and I'm a veteran. I'm a husband. I'm a father. And the interesting thing about this material, once you delve into it, is that everyone has to act within their own capacity to express this information. So Gray State has been my effort to kind of draw the human narrative out of all this terrifying information that we see all around us. And I think that's been my responsibility as a filmmaker to kind of craft a human story out of this. And I think what I want to definitely tell your listeners is that every time you look at some of these things happening, like, why isn't anyone showing this in a film? I mean, that is what I'm doing. That is what Gray State is.
Welcome to another podcast of The Gray Stage, the book, The Gray Stage, written by Greg Fernandez Jr. We're on episode number 35 today. I'm joined with Sophia and Greg. Now, we're on episode 35. This is chapter 16 of the book, The Gray Stage, Greg, that you authored. For those following along in the book, it's page 158 is where we'll be starting today. Chapter 16 is a very long chapter. 50 pages. So we've broken this up into a bunch of bite-sized chunks able to digest for the listener because there's a lot to cover here. We're at the bottom of page 158 here talking about the Crowley case. I'll go through, narrate 3 or 4 paragraphs, and then we'll get some insight here from the others. All right, let's start off here. Once again, chapter 16, bottom of page 158, starting with the second to the last paragraph at the bottom. Detective Sean McKnight and Detective Brian Bone met with Kate Crowley, most likely on January 19th, 2015. According to Detective McKnight, Kate informed Detective Bone and I that she had not seen David, Comel, or her granddaughter since the birthday party in August. She had not spoken with them either and had concerns because they changed their phone number, end quote. So now we know that to be true, they were in the process of changing phone numbers because they had a different service, a different provider. But when it starts off with the 2 detectives were meeting with Kate Crowley on January 19th, keep in mind that was the very same day that I created the Justice for David Crowley and Family Facebook group. This was the Monday following when the bodies were discovered on Saturday the 17th. Sunday, they did some investigation. They did some cleanup in the house on the 18th. Monday was actually a holiday on the 19th. And so that's when things got goofy for me. And that's when I thought I'd go ahead and start that page along with Thomas Lapp, who started the other Facebook group. So this was the same time that the live investigations and everything were going on in real time. We were also monitoring the case from a social media standpoint. The daughter's birthday, Rania, was August at their house in Apple Valley. So this is what they're referring to as the birthday party that they had was the last time everyone had really gotten together as a family. And it's a good point to mention here because things start escalating. The following paragraph starts, Rania's birthday party was also the last time Danny Mason saw David, Comel, and Rania together. Detective Tommy Booth's report stated Danny Mason said the birthday party was at the end of August, but we know this was early August. I'd like to just make a note there that the party was August 10th, I believe, and we also say that this was the last time Danny Mason saw all 3 together. That may be true. More than likely, it is true, but we have a hard time trusting anything that Danny August Mason says, so take that with a grain of salt. He also says the party was at the end of August, which we know now to be at the beginning of August. Continuing on, at this birthday party, Detective Booth continued, was not only Mason, but a lot of writers, producers, and filmmakers who were all in some way, shape, or form related to the movie and concept trailer of Gray State. The only other people that he can remember that were at the birthday party, other than the people related to the movie, was Crowley's family, David Crowley's family. David Crowley's father and brother were there, along with possibly some other family members. But Mr. Mason was unsure. And so any comment on that as far as who was there, who was in attendance, who wasn't? But they had a barbecue. They rolled outside. There was some video footage of that in the movie. The Eric Nelson documentary captured some footage of that birthday party. She had turned 5 years old.
So all of that is really based on what Danny August Mason tells cops. So he tells them that this birthday party was towards the end of the month, which we know is not accurate. He says that this was the last time that he saw all three of them. Like you said, it's hard to trust what he says because this is also the same person who at the same time is saying he is a co-creator of Gray State, and he and David are working out whatever legal issues there may be. But he tells the police that he's also just a quote-unquote actor, which to me it still is very, very strange. When I first heard that, it flew over my head. It did not actually register. But why would Danny August Mason need to tell the police that he's something that he is not? But this birthday party is really the last big gathering of all of these different people. It's very interesting. All the people that we know were there, all the people that are in videos and photos being there. This is really it. After this, there's no big gathering like this, as far as I know.
Okay, just to point out from what to jump on to what Greg said too, Danny August Mason did tell police that he was nothing more than an actor in the film. We know that he claims himself that he was a co-founder, co-producer, co-writer. He was from a business end heavily involved with this thing. But the reason he had to say that he was only an actor is that this is where we see Danny August Mason start to distance himself from this, from the murders, distance himself in the fact that they're asking, how close were you? Because that's their first round of investigation. For any investigation is you start with your closest people surrounding you, and then you work your way outwards. Danny August Mason was part of that first group, his inner circle. And that's when he quickly said right off the bat, I'm nothing more than an actor. I don't know what I could tell you about this. I'm friends with the guy, but I'm just an actor in his film, and I have no motive as far as a big windfall if David is found dead from this project. So we see, and I think that Greg is him trying to distance himself right off the bat from this investigation.
He doesn't mention that there's any kids at this party, which in some of Kamel's posts, her social media posts, you can see that there's like a huge table where kids are. So he doesn't even mention that there's any kids. He just makes it sound like it's just all Gray State people at this party for a 5-year-old child, which is very interesting too, that he does not mention that there's any kids there. And we have seen that there were kids there at this party, as far as I can tell.
Yes, it's true. Now the next two paragraphs get very interesting, and hopefully we can strip this out and peel back the onion here. Continuing on, page 159. A few days later, on August 13th, David and his dad talked about setting up a quote weekend to go camping up in Duluth. The last time David and his brother talked was sometime in August of 2014, but the exact date was not given. The timeline entry simply stated, DJ talked to David on the phone, was supposed to babysit. Last time DJ and David spoke. So DJ is Dan Crowley Jr., which is the older brother of David. The senior is the father. Now, a weekend camping up in Duluth, a very common thing here in Minnesota to go up north, camping anywhere up north. Duluth, very popular place to go. So that would make sense. I think all three of us agree that David Crowley was probably not in so good with his father that he was going to spend any time camping with him. They were already on the outs, I think, and we'll see this coming up further. I don't personally believe this camping story was true whatsoever.
I have no reason to doubt that there was, talk of a camping trip. I mean, if it's what the dad is saying, I don't know. I don't have anything to try to discount him of that. I think it's really cool that they are planning some type of a trip. Whoever is writing this timeline that the police have, whether it's Dan Crowley Jr., which it sounds like it's really Dan Crowley Jr. who is compiling this and then sending it off to the cops. But there are a couple things in there that does make the dad sound kind of, it shows that there is a strain between David and his father. Like, to me, it's kind of weird that that a father would say that my son told me that he loved me, and that was weird, that was awkward or something. Now, this could be, again, Dan Crowley Jr.'s interpretation of what his father is telling him about what happened there. I don't really know. I don't know who heard this, who didn't hear this, but that really bothers me, and that's really sad. If it's strange that a son would say, I love you, or that a child would say that, that to me should be something very normal. It's a very positive thing. So it's interesting that that is mentioned in there too, showing there is a strain here. But then they're going camping. They're planning a camping trip. It's kind of weird, back and forth.
And Sophia, the last episode we did, the very end, we touched on that last quote where it said, David told his dad, I love you, which I thought was strange. You know, we estimated, or my hypothesis is that this is another inserted message to plant the seed to police. Not true. None of it was true, I don't think. But they had to say that I love you, and I thought that was strange. That's enough to pique anyone's interest from an investigator to say, wow, maybe he did kill himself. One last time to say, I love you, Dad. Very strange. It's another, they're planting the seeds that David did this. I want to go camping. It means we got along well. Was going to go, babysitting, and everything was all happy. These are things that are inserted, I think, into the narrative by whoever wrote the timeline, and are not true. Now, once again, that's my opinion. I don't believe the camping story was true. I think they may have done those things back years ago when they were growing up as children. But since David got involved in all this, I think the strain over the course of this 2014 whole year is when the pushback started pushing back. And so if they were supposed to go camping in August, I don't buy that either. The last time David and his brother talked was sometime in August, but exact date was not given. I find that very suspicious. Also, they're putting together this timeline. You would obviously know, I'd guess, when you talked to someone last. And then he says that the last time I talked was on the phone. Well, we have gotten those phone records, and I believe in this time frame, Sophia, even in August, these phone calls did not happen between the brothers and the father, David and his father, and David and his older brother. Is that correct?
I would have to double check, but
Okay.
A lot of the phone calls never happened, at least on the AT&T records. And when they say that they called or that they text, that's specifically singling out the AT&T records.
Okay.
It's not like, oh, well, he sent me something through Facebook Messenger and, that kind of thing.
Okay.
I do have the day one journal for the day after the birthday party. It says the morning after Rainey's party, it was good. She was good. Everything was as we called it. But a few happy and a few nasty surprises. Joe is a douchebag, as I put it, an asshole that doesn't know it's an asshole. My mom and dad were great. Dan and Al and Suze. That's it. That's all he says is Dan, Al, and Suze, period. The only time the whole family has been together since our wedding reception in 2008, and Rainey and Susie weren't around then. Big, pleasant affair. Well, why not? We throw a fun, non-traumatic party. And
Who was the douchebag? Joe, was it?
Yeah, Joseph Seaton.
So Joseph Seaton was what we found out later. I had made contact with his girlfriend at the date that he brought to that party. Was it not? Was that her that came forward and reached out to me? Okay. I did talk to her, and she ended up finding out how weird and strange this whole thing was, and said that Joe Seaton had always been an oddball herself, and was glad she got out of that relationship. But I don't know what was going on at that party. But if he's a douchebag, it doesn't surprise me. But a lot of stories with that. But his girlfriend, or whoever his girlfriend was at the time, did come forward and want to reach out and clarify some things, because she was in attendance and went to that birthday party. And so she was able to shed a little light on that on that point.
Do you have any more details? I know you may not have them right in front of you, Dan, but any more thing to add to what she may have said about that party, or?
No, there wasn't really much. They were grilling out. There was, there's a handful of people there. They ate. Some people were inside. Most people were outside. They were grilling out. And that was really it. I didn't get much except when she just said how weird it was looking back. Because I think someone either saw it or something on the movie, on the video footage, saying, "Hey, that's you." We slowed it down, or someone slowed it down and made a still image. And she says, "Yes, that was me on that. I was at that birthday party. I didn't know. I had nothing to do with this triple homicide case indirectly." But so she reached out and contacted and said that they didn't date too long. And then I think Joseph Seaton moved. He's another guy that we had put together potentially that. True or not, but he was more than likely another guy that was gay or homosexual. He's always making comments to other men all the time. Physical, comments, how they look. He's always seen with men joking, never really with girls or girlfriends. So that's why that was interesting to me that he was there with her. But he was acting like a douche. So this could have been David Crowley putting the pieces together and seeing how fake someone was. Trying to put one personality out there in public, but really you're something else. So I don't know what he meant by that. Joseph Seaton was a douche, but we couldn't really get a hold of him ourselves. He's another guy that moved and has left the state.
I think he was in Texas, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's in Austin. He's been hanging out with Danny August Mason.
Oh, okay. Oh, that makes sense.
We did some talks or some interviews as far as the people and the cast of characters in this case who have all either left the state or ended up in Texas or who are no longer in Minnesota. A bunch left and went out west, out to Seattle for Washington or something for a while. Some people are in Texas, but a lot of the cast of characters here, once this new LLC didn't work out, Gray State Universe LLC, that's when a lot of these fled, took off. So that's another important thing to keep in mind, that they stayed, assuming the business was a going concern to move forward. But once it didn't is when everyone split.
Do we know exactly when David and his dad were supposed to go on the camping trip?
That was a good question, because I was thinking that when you read that, it's like, well, if it's already in August, how long? What are good months? I would think, well, they have another month or so, right?
Good question. In Minnesota, it's very popular to do things up north to see the fall colors. It's one of the best spots in the nation to see fall trees, especially up in that Duluth Arrowhead region, way up north. It's like no other place in the nation almost, as far as how spectacular that is. So that could have easily been a September or October camping trip. October is the last month you do anything outside here in the state of Minnesota, essentially, as far as nature, camping, things like that. So it could have been September or October, would have been a very fair game for that. Duluth, especially that time of year, is huge to go up to see the fall colors. Now, once again, the fall colors is mainly a chick thing to do. Female people like to see the fall colors. It's not something you want to say with a group of guy buddies, masculine friends. We're going to go up north and go see fall colors. You would never say something like that. You'd go up with your wife or a girlfriend, but you would never, that's why, once again, the going up to Duluth, this is Dan Sr. talking about this. It follows the line of how we see Dan Sr. act. Very anti-masculine, very anti-manly, if you will. Not that it's wrong. It's just that's maybe they did want to go camping, but I would guess if it's September or October and Dan Sr. wanted to go, it was for other reasons, effeminate reasons. It's why he wanted to go.
It also makes me wonder about how was this something that they did as kids? It was like a family thing.
That very well could have been. The family, where they grew up and what they did, and the outdoorsy kind of stuff that the Crowley family did, would leave me to reason that they probably did those things a lot growing up, outdoorsy things. They lived on, Dan's house where they grew up in Owatonna, Minnesota, along a river creek flowing through. They're on some acres of land, so they did a lot of outside activities and nature kind of things. So I think that would be camping up north in Duluth would certainly be something that many people do here in the state of Minnesota. He goes on to say that DJ talked to David and was supposed to babysit. The last time DJ and David spoke. Now, I'm willing to guess, just from my personal opinion, that Dan Jr., the older brother of David, 3 years older, may have, or more than likely did, babysit or watch Rania as a little girl, age 1, 2, maybe 3, and 4. I think later on is when David started pushing back. When she got to be around 5 years old, I think there was, I don't want you watching my daughter, is the sense that I got. And so it says the last time he spoke to him was him inquiring about babysitting. And so that also is a seed to be planted to police to say, look, I'm a good, caring, loving brother. I don't know what happened, but I offered at a last resort to at least babysit. What can I do? That's painting Dan Jr. in a favorable light, if you will. And all these that are painting Dan Jr. in a favorable light is at the same time painting David Crowley in a negative light. All these things that are making other people look good. Once you get into the psychology of this crime scene, everything they're telling police and investigators and the press is making some character in the story look good, while at the same time making David look bad. So I think that's why they're planting these seeds, because subliminally you're not picking this up. You're an investigator, you're a detective, you're just writing down what happens. But you see that these are all very crafty phrases given to police. They always have a purpose in when these people talk. They're never just giving facts. They're planting, was supposed to babysit. We're getting into the next paragraph, which really gets me, is that David's father wants to take Rania to the zoo. This is one of the, I think it's a blatant lie, is what this next, we're coming up upon this next, but it's all these things from the Crowley family that we suspect are the bad guys in the Crowley family. Always, when it comes to police, these are the members of the Crowley family that are super nice, is what we hear. And I find that strange. I find that odd. I find that peculiar from a psychology standpoint. They're always throwing David under the bus in a roundabout way, of course. Not directly, but
in the timeline, there's no clear date as to when DJ talked to David on the phone, was supposed to babysit, and it says last time DJ and David spoke, which cannot be true, because David will later give his brother his phone, so they must have spoken. Maybe they didn't speak in person or something, but somehow later on, a couple months later in October of 2014, David and his brother had to have spoken, because David gives his brother his new phone number. So it's just odd how some of these things in that timeline, that's why I love when people write timelines, because it makes it very easy to say, okay, well, why doesn't your timeline make sense here? This is one of those things to me that did not make sense. They don't have a clear date of when David and his brother last spoke, but we know that that is not the last time David and his brother spoke. So that was just another strange thing that stood out to me. That's why I made sure to put that in this book.
It's a very important point, because I'll ask you two, if a family member of yours was involved in a triple homicide and were slaughtered and killed, you would go back on your calendar, your date, your emails, whatever. You want to go back and say, wow, I just spoke to that last person last time on Thursday. I just emailed them last on Tuesday. You're going to know the date when you last spoke to that person. How can Dan Crowley Jr. not know the date that he last spoke with his brother? Now, to me, once again, my opinion, he knows when he last saw him. He knows when he last spoke with him. You would know. Slam dunk, you would know. Now, if Dan Jr. was involved in the murder and was around and involved with the killings or the torture, he now can't say this was the last time. So from a guilty conscience, you'll just say, I guess I don't know when the last time I spoke. That's my way I look into this, because a person whose brother was murdered in a triple homicide, along with your sister-in-law and your niece, you're going to know the date, the last date you spoke with them. You're going to look it up and you're going to find it. So I don't buy that as well, that I don't know the last day I spoke. You're putting together a timeline. If I got assigned to do a timeline from a detective, I'm going to put all this stuff in, but I'm also going to put the dates in. Go ahead, look on my calendar, look on my phone to see, hey, when was the last time I spoke to this person? And put down a date, not a range, not a ballpark, a date. Dan Crowley Jr. says he doesn't know the date. So right now, if I was an investigator or a detective or an FBI profile person, I would have to say I call BS on that because you're going to know the date. So how can he not know the date? So here is where these people are winding their stories and they're getting confused on, if you know that if you're saying the truth, you're not hiding something, you're just going to say it. If you're wondering, if you're lying, you're going to be wondering what to say to make sure your story stays consistent and uniform. These people, when they're talking to police, are talking from almost a script. They want to make sure they say the right things. And that's how I think we can back into what really happened or what most likely happened here, because you get the same cast of characters lying and getting the story wrong because they're trying to cover what they want to say versus just answering the facts. Right? Is that a correct statement? They're thinking too much.
We
There's nothing to
also
think
have,
about if you are a true victim here. But so that's how I can tell personally. Now, I'm not speaking for you guys both, but just for me, is you can tell Dan Jr. Crowley is involved in some way, shape, or form because he doesn't know simple answers to simple questions.
also for September 21st, David is just really involved in writing in his journal. That's what he's talking about. He's been writing for the last 4 days, taking a 31-hour blow writing curriculum. He's talking about flying in with his lawyer to face meet in regards to this in LA and having a stake. There's no mention of the zoo. Not that, oh, he talked with his dad and he interrupted me. And then he goes on and he talks about Anjem and Sidra and about Pornalia and how they're trying to manipulate Kamel, but there is no mention of the zoo. None.
Yeah, that's coming up on the next page, Sophia, as well, because Greg puts the timeline very good in how things happen, and that is coming up here in the next few paragraphs.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and I think this is obviously the best chapter of the book, Greg, that you put together, because every single thing here is very, very important, and the details that you put in here are very good. Other than the fact that it shows that the detectives weren't doing the job, as far as you would know, that things wouldn't make sense. So here we go. At some point around this time, David Crowley asked Mitch Heil and Danny Mason to sign release forms so David could move ahead with Gray State on his own. The original release form David Crowley wanted Danny Mason to sign had an August 1st, 2014 date as the effective date. One of the most important points in this certification of employment and release agreement stated, quote, Mason hereby agrees Crowley is the author and sole and exclusive owner of the material and all right, title, and interest therein and in the projects, including but not limited to any and all copyrights, trademarks, ancillary, and subsidiary rights, or generally, quote, the rights. You're signing off the rights, the whole umbrella of the things that fall underneath the rights are you now giving over. And so that was dated August 1st. And he sent it to two people, Mitch Heil, who's a business partner, and Danny Mason, who's a business partner. So he sent it to his only two business partners that there is. Now, this is where I feel that the detectives should go back and re-interview Danny Mason, because you said you're not a business partner. You have nothing vested in the project except that you're merely an actor. So they failed right there, but let's get in further as far as this trademark. The last time Danny Mason saw David alive was in September, but he was unsure of the exact date. Let that sink in. He would know once again, the date that you last saw someone who was a victim of a triple homicide. If you had nothing to do with it, you would know. You'd be impacted. But he says, once again, just like Dan Jr., it was unsure. Those are telltale signs in an investigation. So according to Detective Tommy Booth, Danny Mason stated that he, quote, had come over to the Crowley's residence to talk to David concerning the movie and where the movie was heading. Now, this was September. I personally, my opinion is that this also never happened. Danny's trying to plant the seeds that they were working on this movie, working on a release, talking about things in the driveway and whatnot. I think that once he got that letter in the mail, that would have been a very hard legal thing to get August 1st to say that I want to cut ties with you. And so this may have happened, meeting in the driveway. But he doesn't know the date. So I'm guessing he's making it sound like he's putting together a good effort to do this. We all know that Danny August Mason ignored repeated attempts to get an answer on this. And not until November, I think, is when he makes his first response. So he ignores this whole thing for August, September, and October, I believe. I believe it's 3 months. He didn't hear anything back. All he heard was crickets and David Crowley.
I think there's some correspondence in September, and then there's the last one is in December. It's very
emails. Yes.
Emails. It's very interesting that you have Danny August Mason. He sends pretty much the same template, right, to Danny August Mason and to Mitch Heil, because Dan, you had the template for Mitch Heil for what David Crowley sent to Mitch Heil. We don't know the exact date, right? We don't know the exact date when these were sent.
No, we just know that the lawyer gave him this form, and he personalized one for Mitch that had his name and his company name on it, and then one for Danny August Mason that had his name and his company. But I think the rest, the verbiage and the words used in that contract or in that legal document was all the same.
I would love to know what date that David Crowley sent those out. How much time did he give them? 30 days, 60 days, 90 days?
I don't know if there was a deadline on those. We read the notes. We have the messages, right? But I don't think there was a date down there, unless we had just a screenshot. But I don't think there was a due date. Now, Mitch.
Yeah, August 1st. August 1st, I think. Both of those contracts, and we can pull those up, but I think it was August 1st. So he must have sent those out.
But did David, you asked if David gave them a due date, I think is what you said. I don't think.
I was trying to figure out what date did David send these out to them. So I'm curious about that. Was it May, June, July, August?
No, I think he sent it in August. The emails. Yeah, with the date of the document was August 1st. Yeah. I think
I see what you're saying.
Now, if that was August 1st and Danny August Mason was at the party on the 10th, that would have been very awkward. So he may have sent Danny's out after the party, but still had August 1st date on there. That's another very Minnesota thing to do. You don't want to, you want to avoid confrontation. You want to have the party and then send the email and hit send once that person leaves the party. So there's no confrontation at a nice, fun kid's birthday party. I could totally see David Crowley sending it after the party to avoid confrontation.
Was Mitch Heil at the party that we know?
I don't think Mitch Heil was at the party. He wasn't doing much with Mitch Heil in the August timeframe, and I think they had pushed each other away on good terms before that. But I can't confirm. We could look it up.
Sure. Well, that's interesting.
In September 21st, there's a paragraph that David wrote. It says, Danny is still stonewalling me on the release document. I do not care. If he wants to burn up his energy, fine. I am getting a legal ship in order, an expensive ordeal. This is his exact words. BX is almost done or almost gone. Mitch and I are amicable, and he signed his release, which was the biggest thing all along. So
that seems like the sign of a true friend. I mean, and they were childhood friends. They served together. I mean, that's what you would do if you really were a friend, whether you agreed with David Crowley's views or not. And we know Mitch Heil, who spoke illy after David died. He was very honest about his views about all of the gray state and all of that stuff, but he still signed away his rights. Why didn't Danny August Mason do that? It's just very interesting.
And that's the difference. Mitch Heil, whether we like him or not, kept things amicable, David said, and signed it and moved forward. We may agree to disagree, but let's at least move forward. That's what David was looking for these friends that are now bleeding over into business partners, and now things are being legal and things are advancing. How do you address that? And so Danny stonewalled for a month or two and then wrote back a response as a counter offer to say, hey, what's in it for me? And so that's fair enough, I guess, but they never had a sit down, hey, let's have a cup of coffee and just hash this out. It was all emails going back and forth. Another very Minnesota nice way to do things to avoid confrontation. You're not in each other's face. This isn't something you'd see on the East or West Coast. You send an email and you can be a keyboard warrior, not a right. And so that's how they did it. And so if this was all going on, and then Danny August Mason says that I was at his house talking about the specifics of the film, talking in the driveway with David, it leads me to believe that statement is suspect. I would have a hard time believing that took place, but I have no proof to either prove or deny it. What comes up later is, I think, the proof in the pudding.
The Gray Stage Podcast. New episodes on the 1st of every month. In this podcast series, we will examine the questions about David Crowley and the accusations against him. If you're looking for documents, videos, photos, audio recordings related to this case, please go to thegraystage.com. The truth can be buried, but that also means that we can dig it up. This book examines what we know about David Crowley and the accusations against him. But this is just the beginning. This book is intended for researchers and for people who genuinely care about this case and have questions and want to find the answers. This is for people who have a shovel and are ready to dig up the buried truth. Each month, Dan Hennon, myself, and many other fabulous researchers will go through my book and read it chapter by chapter and discuss various aspects of this case. What do we know about David Crowley? What do we know about his family? More importantly, what do we know about the allegations against David Crowley? Thank you all for taking the time to listen, to watch, and to help keep this case alive. You can always find us at the Justice for David Crowley and Family Facebook group. Thank you for listening, and thank you for watching. And thank you for caring. May God bless you all.
missing with no explained reason. For all intents and purposes, they've just vanished.
Hi, I'm Kyle Kraska. It's the FBI case that has all the elements of a Hollywood thriller. A missing millionaires, a huge reward, and clues the cops just can't figure out.
We feel almost certain that the women were the victims of a violent crime. The car was very badly and totally burned.
Positively identified by dental records. Second victim that was in the trunk of the burned vehicle. DNA testing has been done.
People responsible for the Yosemite murders are behind bars.
The police interest in the ex-cons heated up. They were getting locked up on parole violation.
But at that point, they were focused really in the wrong direction.
Our final guest of the program is a former police officer, Steve Sanzeri.
Everyone on all the message boards have all been talking about this case and debating it and saying, hey, man, there's something more here than meets the eye.
But I wanted to visit with an expert on this, and Steve obviously is. Steve, thanks for joining us. How are you?
Good morning, Scott. Thank you for having me on.
Mr. Sanzeri, are you there?
I am. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Like you don't know, we've just been talking all day.
The massive manhunt, all kinds of resources, multiple SWAT teams and sheriff's offices and highway patrol and helicopters and infrared technology to find him because of a screw-up.
I mean, I just hoping I wouldn't get shot at the front door. And the curtains moved, the sun's breaking, all of a sudden, Candler came out like a wildcat right at me for my weapon.
This is a fascinating story.
Hello, everyone. This is Sophia from the Gray Stage podcast, and I'd like to invite all of our listeners to join the Justice for David Crowley and Family group located on Facebook, where we have almost 4,000 members. In this group, we welcome discussions regarding the case and have all of the documents located in the files section for everyone to review. If you like, you're welcome to visit Greg Fernandez Jr.'s website called The Gray Stage. It's located at thegraystagewordpress.com. You can find his book and all the official documents for this case at his website. Lastly, I'd like to introduce you to Catherine Michelle, who's a part of this podcast. Catherine Michelle has a YouTube channel under her name, where she mainly discusses the Crowley case. So please feel free to stop by and give her channel a like and a listen. Until our next podcast, keep seeking the truth and justice for David Crowley and his family.
Are you interested in the paranormal, murder mysteries, cryptocurrency, and thought-provoking interviews? Then check out Crypt Rick's I've Been Thinking on YouTube, or every Monday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Studio A at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Welcome to the Crypt.
at 1051 Ramsdale Drive. What happened to David Crowley, his wife, and his daughter? If this was truly a double murder-suicide, why did investigators fail to prove David Crowley guilty? Where is the evidence David Crowley killed his wife and daughter? Where is the evidence David Crowley killed himself? Within 24 hours of finding the bodies of David Kamel and Rania Crowley, the Apple Valley Police Department were treating the incident as a double murder-suicide. Authorities cannot prove David wrote Allahu Akbar in his wife's blood on the living room wall. Authorities cannot prove David wrote I have loved you all with all of my heart on a laptop in the kitchen. Authorities cannot prove David wrote Open the Rise most recent version, Submit to Allah Now on a notepad in his office bedroom. Authorities cannot prove the dog trapped inside the house ate David's right hand, both of Kamel's hands, and their daughter's right arm, since dog feces tests were never done. Authorities did not know about a bullet that rolled out of a living room carpet until they were notified by the cleaning company 2 days after the bodies were found. That bullet would later be tied to Rania Crowley. Authorities did not see the bullet hole in the living room ceiling or the bullet in the attic above until they questioned David's friend a month after the bodies were found. Authorities did not find a motive to support their accusations against David Crowley. Authorities did not find David's blood on any of the bullets at the crime scene. Authorities do not know when David Kamel and Rania Crowley died. What we know for sure is that David Crowley has not been proven guilty.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Ross from Planet X Filmworks channel on YouTube and the Zodiac Files True Crime series. Check it out, and shout out to Greg and the Gray Stage channel. Their content is amazing.
Yes, he has a merchandise video on his Gray Stage channel. You want it? You want it? You want me to send it to you?
Oh, whatever.
He's
You
selling
can
mugs.
do whatever you want. You can do whatever you want.
He's selling mugs. He's selling tumblers. He's selling leggings. Oh, a 5-year-old, a deceased 5-year-old, and you think that's okay?
A simple truth. It really is this simple. Either you believe David Crowley is innocent or you believe he is guilty. If you believe David Crowley is guilty, you are wrong. If you believe David Crowley is innocent, you are right. It really is that simple. A United States Army veteran is dead. His wife and his 5-year-old daughter are dead. A thorough investigation would only conclude with authorities admitting they lacked evidence to support their accusations. If authorities were to admit the case remains unsolved, they would also have to admit that the public may still be in danger. I am not able to solve this case. My interest is in forcing authorities to admit David Crowley is innocent. The reason they refuse to talk about this case is not because they are confident of David's guilt. They lack confidence in their allegations. Their department wishes to move on, but they are only lying to themselves. They must know the simple truth, and they need to publicly admit this. Their credibility depends on it now. The unspoken truth is that David is innocent until proven guilty. Why are authorities running from this simple truth? How long do they think they can run for? You cannot run from God. You cannot run from your nightmares, and you cannot run from the facts. Why would anyone want to? What could possibly motivate someone to try? If you cannot prove David Crowley guilty, then he remains innocent. It's as simple as that. So the resistance we face is disgusting. If David was guilty, the evidence would be right in our faces. If David was guilty, resistance to our questions would not exist. If David was guilty, facts would be evident. There are no facts to prove David guilty. There are only facts which prove David innocent. Hence the resistance to getting justice for David Crowley and family. Who cares? Do the people who closed this case and decided to not speak about it ever again really care? Do the friends who accused David Crowley of being guilty days after his body was found really care? Perhaps they only care about spreading the accusations of David's guilt instead of researching the facts of this case. They don't seem to care about the facts which prove David innocent. Truth is a simple thing. Justice does not die. Facts prove David is innocent. Here we go. Shadows and light. I have lived in darkness. I have lived in the shadows. Now I live in the light of Jesus Christ. He is the light. We can be shadows of that light, or shadows running from the light. We have free will. Do we run to Jesus, run to the light? Or do we run from Jesus and run into the shadows? Do we shine or do we hide? Many people do not have a relationship with Jesus Christ. But it is never too late. We are forever reminded of the thief on the cross. The story is simple. The options are two. The choice is yours to make. At any time in your life, you can believe in Jesus Christ and build a relationship with him. The thief, at the very end of his life, as he was crucified next to Jesus Christ, believed and was saved. The same thief, while others mocked Jesus, asked for forgiveness and recognized Christ was the Son of God. The thief recognized his own punishment as just and also knew Jesus did not deserve what was about to happen to him. A second thief who was crucified next to Jesus said, "If you are the Christ, save yourself and us." The first thief, the one who believed in Jesus, replied, "Do you not even fear God, seeing you are under the same condemnation? And we indeed justly, for we receive the due reward of our deeds. But this man has done nothing wrong." Then the thief who believed in Christ turned to Jesus and asked, "Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom." Jesus answered, "Assuredly I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise." Luke chapter 23, verses 39 to 43. Wouldn't you like to know more about the thief who believed in Jesus and why he said what he said? Disbelievers will always find an excuse to not believe in the Bible. The various translations of the word are a common excuse used by many people who just do not want to believe in the Bible. But let's think about this. Various translations can be used by the devil to confuse people and turn them away from Jesus Christ. That is the devil's goal. The devil tempts us with such doubts on purpose and as planned. Yet the light still shines through the doubt as planned. The translations and our views on the translations are all part of the plan. This is the test which brings us the same choice as the two thieves crucified next to Jesus. One chose to believe, the other did not. In the end, the choice is yours. You can believe in Jesus Christ and accept the free gift of salvation, or you can choose not to. You can live in the light, you can live in the darkness, or remain in the shadows. The choice is always yours. So are the consequences and blessings of your decision. With Jesus Christ, you are truly alive. Without Jesus Christ, you are truly dead.
I'm David Crowley. I'm the writer and director of Gray State, and I'm a veteran. I'm a husband. I'm a father. And the interesting thing about this material, once you delve into it, is that everyone has to act within their own capacity to to express this information. So Gray State has been my effort to kind of draw the human narrative out of all this terrifying information that we see all around us. And I think that's been my responsibility as a filmmaker to kind of craft a human story out of this. And I think what I want to definitely tell your listeners is that every time you look at some of these things happening, like, why isn't anyone showing this in a film? I mean, that is what I'm doing. That is what Gray State is.
Mitch Heil also said that he spoke with David, which I really found very interesting, why David is not letting people into his home at this point.
If the baby was sleeping or taking naps, you don't know what their
true.
routine was.
That's true.
It could be
Maybe
that it
Kamel
wasn't letting in, but we don't know that.
That's speculation. Yeah.
Mitch, I'm guessing, actually came over. They probably talked in the driveway, and that was it. Danny August Mason is the one that I'm doubting that took place, because the very next sentence, read what this says. It says, next paragraph on the top of 160, Danny Mason spoke to David in the driveway. Danny Mason described David as being fragile and had lost a lot of weight. So now he goes out of his way to police to make another disparaging remark. And then later by saying, oh, I guess I was in there in his driveway. I was there. He needed to make something sound that he was gaunt, not in his right mind, lost weight, he wasn't taking care of himself, depressed, suicidal, who knows, but these are more seeds that we're planting. Now, the only way he can get these seeds to police is to say that he was there talking in the driveway. That's where I'm backing into the hypothesis of the whole statement is fake. It didn't happen. But how is Danny August Mason going to say that he looked gaunt and lost a lot of weight? He now has to insert himself in the driveway. So that's what I'm thinking. This is just my opinion once again, is that the statement to police was wrong altogether, was fake. All of it was a lie, because he needed to put David Crowley in a bad shape, in a bad light, to cast him in a bad light, lost weight, and did not look disheveled. Now, he does go on to say that Mr. Mason stated that this was not so much uncommon for David. Booth continued that when we would get wrapped up in projects and writing scripts for a movie, they would do this. So they would wrap up and spend 30 days and hole up. But he said fragile and lost weight. Those are two key words. David Crowley is a very healthy, in shape person, very focused on what he eats, his nutrition, very focused. He wouldn't be someone that would be looking fragile or lost weight. Now, not saying that it's true. Maybe in that case, maybe he had. Maybe it's what was true. But what I'm saying is, what leads down this road, just back to the statement to police. I don't know the date I went over there to talk in the driveway. That to me means it is a lie. I don't think he went to talk to the driver. That's my personal opinion, because he needed time to make sure that the police knew that he was fragile and had lost weight.
Which is interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, because now we have not only September. So basically, we have some of the Gray State goons saying from September until December, he's fragile. He's losing weight.
A steady decline is what they need to plant the story that for a 3 to 4 month period, things got progressively worse and ultimately ended in his death. We know that's not the case.
But you don't
why
hear.
Are we going back to all these other months to make it all bad? Is what I'm assuming, when they got together to say, what are we going to say to police? They came up with a bullet list of, you say this, you say this, you say this, and I'll say this. And that way our whole story jives. And at the same time, it's planting the seeds to police that sets up that this guy's suicidal. He's not in his right mind.
Right.
That's my opinion. Now, all this stuff could have happened.
Good. But Danny August Mason saying that David Crowley was fragile in September is a big problem, because there are photos out there of David Crowley in September. He does not look fragile. He doesn't look any different. There was a whole garage sale. So it's just interesting, the people that are there in the last months of his life that are saying this, that he looked fragile. I know 3 of them: Danny August Mason, Mason Hendricks and Sean Wright. Those and maybe Joseph Seaton, maybe Adam Schaff. They may all say those same things, but you don't hear David's family saying that. You don't even hear Kamel's sister when she goes and talks to David. She doesn't say that David looked like shit, that David looked like he hadn't been eating or anything like that.
On the
did she? Okay, maybe
we'll
she
get
did.
to that. I'm not sure, but I think
Yeah, we'll
she
get to that in the
had
future.
Negative to say that he didn't look normal. She had something
Nothing that
negative to
stood
say.
out.
I don't know about that, but the best person would be to get the boy at the garage sale, the neighbor's boy at the garage sale that was talking to David about all this stuff at the garage sale when he was selling his equipment. He'd be a great witness, just to confirm or deny the characteristics of David from a physical standpoint. That's what the detectives should have done when the stuff did not start making sense. Go back and interview the witnesses, the boy across the street, the neighbor who liked David, had good conversation that afternoon.
Yeah, that's a great clip that I cannot find now. If anybody can help find that, but then you have Judy Prochnow, who said that kid had some mental issues, or he had something like that. And it's like, well, this is why people don't comment on that, because they're going to be attacked by these people.
Yeah,
who
you'll get followed up with the disparaging. Anything to discredit is what we've seen. Judy Prochnow's job or role in this whole thing was to discredit the people that are going on the right path, I think. The little boy, the garage sale across the street who was there talking with David, she knew that they had a good conversation and he didn't look gaunt and lost weight. And the kid had a good time talking with them, it sounded like, for a couple of hours. Right. And so Judy comes in now and said that there's mental issues, mental illness, something. Well, that is a disparaging thing, because whether he had mental illness, maybe he does, maybe he did. We don't know this, but it wouldn't have been an impact of him enjoying 2 hours of chatting with David Crowley for an afternoon. He had a good time doing it.
Yeah, and there were cops there too. They didn't, nobody ever talked to the cops, say, hey, how did David look back in September? But the fact that we have photos that show he looks the same as any other thing. Why is Danny August Mason trying to paint this picture of David looking like this back in September that coincidentally lines with what other people are saying in December? The people who are claiming they are the last people to have spoken with David are trying to say the exact same things. You're saying, so for 4 months he looked like crap?
The narrative that's pushed by the same certain people are all telling the same story, which isn't the truth, but you're hearing the same story, very consistent. And the police bought into that. The detectives bought into that hook, line, and sinker. And so that's when we say that we don't have trust in the detectives doing their job. Did they do good jobs on other things? Maybe they didn't. I don't know. I'm guessing that the investigation was shut down by people higher up that told them not to look into it any further, versus them just being poor detectives. But this whole scenario is a mixture of so many things interwoven that's hard to piece out what was really going on. I just think that this whole Danny August Mason interview with police, all these things that he said and all these things that he stated, it is of my personal belief that all of it in these 2 paragraphs are a lie. I can't imagine any of it being true, but it's trying to serve a purpose. Now, anything, Sophia, on that?
Well, David talks about losing 14 pounds, getting back to the weight that he was before he went to Germany. So he's working out, he's working hard, he's writing. He did the whole BX sale, and he was very upset with Danny August Mason that day. Something happened during the BX sale, because he is very annoyed by Danny
so that
August
was September 9th was the sale, or the 7th or something?
I think it's the 17th.
Oh, okay.
I'm getting back to it. Let's see here. I was trying to find the day.
While you're looking that up, losing 14 pounds or putting muscle mass to something is possibly losing weight, or is losing weight, but you're becoming more fit. These guys are all they're into CrossFit, cross training, and so that may be losing weight to be more healthy or to be fit. He used the word fragile, weak gaunt. That's what comes to mind when you use the word fragile. And I think that was not true. Fragile. He may have lost weight. And he says
Okay,
a lot of weight.
I'm trying to find that actual thing
Well, she looks
because
for that, Greg. Anything else with how you consider the words used here? As far as he may have said he lost some weight. He was getting back to normal, eating healthier. But in fact, he uses that David lost a lot of weight and looked fragile. Those are key words that didn't need to be used there. So if they didn't need to be used, they must have been used on purpose. He selected those words to tell the officers, and that to me is that those are both meant as derogatory comments.
Yeah, he's
Well,
definitely
throwing David under the bus.
Yeah, basically, he's building this storyline and trying to add to this storyline
Beefing
that
it up.
David, was on the decline, which is like, no, he wasn't, because there's a rise and then there's a fall. There's all of these things, and it's just, I just keep going back to the people that didn't mention that. His family members don't mention him being, losing weight or anything like that. It's very interesting. The people that do mention that are the same people you'll find in Eric Nelson's film.
I think
in the slot.
I think Danny August Mason, the Gray State guys, could have said, hey, they were really concerned about Comel's mother not doing well with cancer, very ill, in hospice. But I don't think David told those. I don't think those guys were aware that she was even having cancer and dealing with these issues, because I think they would have thrown that out there for fodder, more additional fodder to the police. But I don't think they knew that, so therefore they had to come up with these other things.
it was September 8th.
September 8th. Okay.
Mm-hmm. The universe may want me to destroy Danny Mason, since he has given indication that he wants to stand in my way. What a fool. But what Dan Sr. didn't read in the documentary was the garage sale is finally over. I can recover from this madness. It was a fun time, in fact. We got to meet many of the neighbors, good impressions all around, sold $5.5K worth, but then had the idea, why didn't I try to package it as a business model with assets for sale? I could have tripled my money like a boss if I found the right investors. What a bummer of an idea. To have right after selling. Anyway, Danny is my first threshold guardian, and either I will convert him to my cause or destroy him. His actions will decide.
Wow.
Doesn't that sound different than what we've heard?
Yeah.
Putting that, when you read that puts it in the proper context.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all of these things taken out of context, which is what Eric Nelson's film does, which is what a lot of these people do. I don't know if they're doing it purposely, but in that film, a lot of the stuff just seems like it's taken out of context. Even stuff that we were involved in, Dan, is probably taken out.
A true documentary on this case and on this story would have a phrase and a quote like that Sophia read purposely in it to help the user or the viewer determine, what happened, what was the mindset of these people. Eric Nelson's movie cherry-picked all things that had negative repercussions, derogatory. It was all this to put David Crowley in a negative light. That's why it was so obvious propaganda for those when we saw it. You could just tell it was a propaganda piece. There wasn't two sides to the story to let you decide. But that's that's a very good point, Sophia, that he was a threshold that he had to either convert over, because moving forward there was no way to. They were butting heads, and so you needed to move above, below, to get on to the next phase, and it wasn't happening. It was stalling, and that's what the stress and frustration was on David's side, that he couldn't even. They were dealing with Comel's mother, hospice care, everything else.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to switching cars and switching phone lines and cell phone providers, it was a lot of stuff happening. Rania was getting ready to go to, signing up for preschool. At the same time, the world, with a lot of things happening. And so we hear that in the term or the sense that they were pushing people away and they were isolating. Those kinds of terms and phrases come out meaning negative once again, that David was on his way to suicidal. But a lot of things are going on. Now, the next paragraph says, the last time Daniel Crowley Sr., now the dad, saw David was on September 21st, 2014. I took Rania to the zoo. Daniel Crowley Sr. wrote, last minute he tried to discourage me from picking up Rania. David's father still picked up Rania and took her to the zoo. So a lot there. For those not familiar, the Minnesota Zoo, the biggest zoo in the state of Minnesota, is in Apple Valley. The Apple Valley is a location of the Minnesota State Zoo. It's a big, huge zoo. They live in Apple Valley. So that would be common, be something to do for that age, for Rania, for that age, very close to get to. So that, I believe, could have happened going to the zoo. Now, the date.
Is it a big zoo or is it a?
What's that?
Is it a big zoo or is it a kind of a smaller zoo?
It would rival, the San Diego Zoo, or a huge, many acres, outdoor, inside, big ocean stuff, dolphins, whales, lots of things.
Really?
To go see animals, cougars, mountain lions, bears, grizzly bears. It's tons of things. And so when my daughters were small, we had an annual pass one year to go unlimited times to the zoo. We lived in Apple Valley. So you don't need to go and pack everything in a 6-day, a 7-hour event to pack everything in. You can go for an hour and take off, go for another hour and take off, go on a weekly basis or something. Very popular thing to do. It's very kid friendly too. Lots of things to see there, all sorts. I wouldn't say it's world renowned, but the Minnesota Zoo in Apple Valley, Minnesota is highly regarded. It's a must-see stop if you're traveling in the Twin Cities area from out of town. It's one of your top 10 things to do for visitors, for touristy people coming. So that would totally make sense to do it. Now,
that's pretty interesting that he would say that David didn't want him to do this. And that makes me wonder, like, between August, where David is telling him that I love you, that the dad is planning on some camping trip, and all of a sudden here we have Daniel Crowley Sr. wants to take Rania to the zoo, and David is trying to discourage that. That's pretty interesting.
Greg, let me ask you a question. Do you believe this statement took place? Let's start there. Is this whole thing another lie?
I mean, I wouldn't.
It is. It's all BS. All of it. None
Sure.
of this.
I mean, I would start with what the statement says and then break it down, which sounds like what you have done. You've listened to what they've said and you don't buy it. So I can't go any further than that, and I don't know. I really don't know. All that I know is that this is what is in the documents. This is what they say. And so I kind of feel like, if this is accurate, then okay, then I kind of go based on that. Like, what?
Yeah, it could very well be accurate. What I'm looking at on my side is that all these characters are giving fishy stories and fishy statements that have one thing in common. They're making David look bad.
Right.
Whether he took her to the zoo or not, throw that out. Last minute, he tried to discourage me. Now, what father would discourage a loving grandfather from taking the granddaughter to the zoo? No one.
There's got to be some issue, right? There's got to be some issue.
I'm saying that it didn't even took place because he's trying to make David look bad. I think they were already on the outs in September. He wasn't doing anything with his father. But his father lives 30, 45 minutes away. Did he drive up for the day? Tried to discourage him? He would have said, I'm not going to go home if I came up, drove all the way here to do this. I don't know if any of it took place. Is it logical? Yes. Would the detectives buy it? Yes. And at the same time, are you helping to build up the credible story that David lost his rocker? Yes. He's doing all these things. Sophia, your thoughts? I don't personally, my opinion, once again, I think this is all BS yet. They have to feed BS to the detectives.
David doesn't.
Daniel Crowley Sr., all you need to do is watch the Eric Nelson movie and just see when he's reading from this so-called script or reading from what we know now as a script. None of it was true. He's lying through his teeth. He can't even. So the question is, why would a father of a murdered son, triple homicide, including your granddaughter that you love, be lying at all? So we got to take everything into consideration. We know later from the stuff that Sophia did that these so-called texts and phone calls in November and December did not happen. So now you have to go ask yourself, did the stuff in September even happen? Thoughts?
There are 2 phone calls. One was about 56 seconds long. The other one was 2 minutes long. They were late in the afternoon from Dan Sr. to David. And then on David's journal for September 21st, it says chalking up the house before it gets cold. I think it might be cold now. And he's talking about that, saying that there's lots of housework to do, and Kamel is helping out with that. And then they talk about Anjum and Nyla and Sidra. But there's no mention of Dan Sr. There's no mention of the zoo and Ronnie. Nothing like that. I think that if he was busy, like he is writing in this whole paragraph, there's a lot of information. This is the one where he's talking about writing for 4 days in a row and thinking about going back to LA and having a steak with his lawyer friend and everything. And then he talks about what else? Just the chaos that's going on between Anjum and Nyla, or not Nyla, but Anjum and Sidra and Kamel, and talking about that and how the BX weight is vanishing profitably. And I'm on the other side of the hardest thing I've ever had to undertake. Those are his last words for that day. But nothing about the zoo, nothing about Ronnie.
Yeah, so I'm 50-50 on it. It certainly all could have happened. It's certainly none of it could have happened. And more likely than not, bits and pieces of it or portions of it could have happened. That's what we're seeing from these characters along the way. That's just how it's been happening. We get a bunch of half-truths we don't know. And if you're starting to tell half-truths in a triple homicide investigation, that's raising antenna for the detectives. Just it's too goofy. Now the next one, Greg, do you have anything on that one?
Oh, he paused himself.
Okay, it says, continuing on, quote, after the zoo, Dan Sr. continued, I stopped in to talk. He was about to make a big movie deal. Talked about big shot lawyers from the IDS building. He was going to fly to LA to do final negotiations with the producers. He was going to be a millionaire by the end of the year. They were busy. Didn't seem like they wanted to have me hang around, so I left. That was the last time I saw David. Now, lots to unpack there. Go ahead, Sophia.
And I actually think that might have happened, that David might have spoke to him about that, because it's mentioned in the very first paragraph of the Day One Journal for September 21st.
Okay.
He's talking about that whole scenario of going to LA, making the deal and stuff like that with his lawyer and the producers. So,
and that we know was true from the facts in the actual case, that he did go out there a second trip back to LA, met with the producers, the Mikes, and did the negotiations, talked with, he says big shot lawyers from the IDS building. Now in the Minneapolis, in the city of Minneapolis downtown, the tallest skyscraper there is the IDS building. When it was first built in the 80s, it was a huge, almost like the World Trade Center towers or the Chrysler building or the Sears Tower in Chicago. It was Minnesota's or Minneapolis's own version of being a big shot city. It was a big glass skyscraper, huge. Most businesses that were in there, because of the high rent, had to be attorneys, CPA firms, law firms, big shot businesses. You couldn't get in
Mhm.
there with the rent until you were something substantial. So growing up in outstate Minnesota like these guys did, and me myself, if you want to rise to anything in the business world, you want to try to end your career at the IDS building. That was the thing for many people. That's to say that you've made it. If you're in Chicago, I'm on the Sears Tower. I have an office on the top floor. It's a huge thing. That was the metaphor, so to say. So when he said big shot lawyers at the IDS, this was David beefing up the story, while at the same time telling the truth. And so at the same time, David's father, Dan Crowley Sr., is a big-time engineer, very smart, has a lot of patents and things. Very smart, is a high-paid person for what he does for his business, but his business is outstate. It doesn't have big name recognition. They're not in a fancy office. His name and picture are not on the front page of business magazines. Dan Crowley had all that, shoving this all down the kids, shoving it down the throat all their lives growing up. What a big shot he was, and how much money he could make, and how intelligent. Now his son, whom he doesn't like the best, he likes, I think the daughter and Allison and Dan Jr., I think better, because once again, they're still in this fight with David. I don't think that he likes, now he's jealous because his own son is now top him. I'm the one meeting the lawyers, the big shot lawyers. I'm in the IDS building. I'm being flown to LA. These are things Dan Crowley Sr. has never done, right? So it's a power play at the same time that's going on. He doesn't like it. He's not impressed with it. And he's using the phrase big shot lawyers. That to me is another detrimental. It didn't need to be said. He could have said important or some high level lawyers. He says big shot. That's a shot. That's an underhanded compliment, right? A backhanded. It's not a favorable thing to say big shot. It's kind of laughing on the side, like idiot.
Kind of a slight.
Yeah, you're calling that you're meeting some big shot lawyers. He wouldn't say that in a good way. He would say that in a negative way. He's meeting with some big shot lawyers, kind of like, that's the way he's saying it here. The IDS Tower in Minneapolis, you wouldn't bring that up unless you're trying to impress someone.
Wow.
So either Dan Crowley Sr. thought that David was trying to impress him, or he didn't like the egos battling here. He didn't take too kindly it. Now, we know those things were true. His office, legal firm for Lohman and Abdo was in the IDS building. Now, they could have been on the 3rd floor, 13th floor. It wasn't at the top, I'm sure. I've never heard of the law firm before. But he did go, sign the negotiations in LA, and he could have been a millionaire at the end of the year. All those things are true. Here's the thing that catches. They didn't seem like they wanted me there, and they were busy, so I left. So it's a cry victim, once again, throwing David under the bus at how rude he was, what a prick he was, what a jackass he is. That's what I'm sensing from this terminology of words, once again. Throwing David under the bus, while at the same time saying how nice I am coming to take your daughter. I'm such a great grandfather of the year award to take your daughter to the zoo. So he needs to point out the fact that he had to leave because it got uncomfortable. Did that need to be said? Does that add any value to the investigation? No. But if you're trying to make David look bad, now it adds value, because now it's adding to that credibility of him being a dickhead. This is his own father saying it. So, thoughts on this, Sophia?
Sophia, go ahead.
What do you think? Would a parent, what would this kind of verbiage and usage of words, and it's very condescending, is it not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the whole big shot, that is condescending. It's something like my dad would use towards me. He's just been that.
It's a slight.
Way.
It's a phrase you wouldn't use in something positive, Greg.
And then when he's talking about David and was, or they were too busy, and that's why he left. I mean, if family comes over, you stop what you're doing so you could visit with them. And I find that extremely odd that David and Kamel wouldn't stop to speak with him. If that actually happened, then that is a signal to Dan Sr. saying, hey, we don't want you around. You need to move on out.
Time's up. You know, we visited, but you know, we got to move on. We got things to do, you know, and maybe he's not good at picking up the vibe or the signals. I don't know, but he instead of saying I overstayed my welcome, I should have left, he puts it onto them, but that they were busy and they didn't want me there. They were the bad guys. That's the words he's using is pointing the finger that I did nothing wrong. They didn't want me there, so I left. And so that's where I think that if he was being honest with the detectives and saying really what happened on the events leading up to the deaths, you wouldn't have phrases such as these. So backstabbing,
right? And
those types of things. And this is all littered in the detectives' interviews with all these guys.
Right.
It was backstabbing stuff.
I'm David Crowley. I'm the writer and director of Gray State, and I'm a veteran. I'm a husband. I'm a father. And the interesting thing about this material, once you delve into it, is that everyone has to act within their own capacity to express this information. So Gray State has been my effort to kind of draw the human narrative out of all this terrifying information that we see all around us. And I think that's been my responsibility as a filmmaker to kind of craft a human story out of this. And I think what I want to definitely tell your listeners is that every time you look at some of these things happening, like, why isn't anyone showing this in a film? I mean, that is what I'm doing. That is what Gray State is.
Mitch Heil also said that he spoke with David, which I really found very interesting, why David is not letting people into his home at this point.
If the baby was sleeping or taking naps, you know, you don't know what their routine was.
That's true.
It could be
maybe
that there wasn't letting in, but we don't know that.
That's speculation. Yeah.
Mitch, I'm guessing actually came over. They probably talked in the driveway, and that was it.
But this is why with that timeline where it's like, you know, well, okay, this isn't really coming from David's dad, right? This is David's dad telling it to David's brother, and then David's brother sending it off to the cops.
This statement, as far as the big shot lawyers and stuff, was ultimately sent to detectives from Dan Jr., the brother, on behalf of Dan Sr. So he may have altered, edited, corrected, tweaked. Whoever did it, it's negative, and once again, it's manipulated, is what I'm.
Yeah, those are the things that I thought would be in Eric Nelson's film. Okay, let's hear from the dad. Let's hear, you know, what his interpretations are, et cetera, et cetera. But the way that this timeline reads, it doesn't read like that. It just reads like it's a third party talking about this while he gave his view on this, and they just kind of threw it out there. But it doesn't seem like it's something that came directly from David's dad to the cops. That's the big problem that I have with this timeline that they have here. So I did focus on this timeline for that.
Also, Greg, it would be nice if these characters would, over the next few years, as this gets older, come out of the woodwork and come and do an interview and say, here's what happened. Here's what got mixed up. Here's what I sent. Here's what I tweaked. before I sent it to detectives. Here's where you guys are misinterpreting some of this stuff. That'd be great to have those individuals on.
Yeah, but a
Doesn't really
father, but the father is not going to go against his son, right?
No, well, that'll never happen. Neither of them. It'll never happen. But we have to keep that option open as people turn and as people, who knows if they come, change their beliefs and, become a Christian and say, let's get some of this truth out. This is too hard for me to carry all these years. I'm guessing after 7 years now, this is very heavy on a handful of people's lives.
I would agree.
Dan, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
How far away is the zoo from David's house approximately?
How far is David's house from where?
The zoo, approximately.
The zoo would be, 2 miles. 2-3 miles. Yeah, it's close.
Because there are 2 phone calls, one at 4:39 p.m. from Dan Sr. and again at 5:31 p.m. So the zoo closes around dusk, correct?
I don't know. There's a lot of inside stuff that you can do with lights on. The outside stuff you couldn't do. Does it close? I think we'd have to find out from the hours if it's a weeknight or a weekend night.
Because this is supposedly a Sunday, correct? The 21st.
So it could be a 5 o'clock. It could be 5 o'clock closing on a Sunday, and those phone calls then make sense.
Yeah, which means that he probably called late, like around closing time. They probably left around 5-ish. But would it take him 31 minutes to get home?
No.
If it was only 2 miles?
There's no traffic in Apple Valley on a Sunday evening. It would be in 10 minutes. 10 at the most, probably.
So maybe that's when he left. And then he turned around and he called David. But at that time, it's dinner time. They're working on dinner. They're getting Rania settled in for the night, fed, decompressing
Yeah,
her.
because she's in school. She has to get up the next morning. And so they probably have a Sunday evening, routine. And maybe the dad was overstepping his bounds. I don't know.
Yep. That's what I'm thinking here. And maybe that is true that they were just trying to get her from deviating from that routine, because once you do that, things go off kilter pretty quickly.
Yep. And that is fair enough. I'm sure Greg knows all about the routine with a couple little ones.
So
so that was really it about the father. The next paragraph we get into Mitch Heil. Is there anything left then, or should we move forward?
No, I think
anything with Dan Sr.? Okay. On September 24th, Mitch Heil signed over all rights for Hothead Productions and Bullet Exchange. He had legally signed over all his rights to David, Detective Booth reported, and was no longer part of those companies. End quote. Mitchell also felt that the only way to save the relationship as friends was to separate business and friendship. Now, I agree 100% on that. This is a true good friend acting in good faith, Mitch Heil, doing the right thing. Signed over everything and they saved the friendship. That makes perfect sense. Now, according to Mitchell, Detective Booth reported, quote, Bullet Exchange was not a successful company and they did not make much money towards that, end quote. The top of page 161 starts, the two friends spoke in David's driveway, once again, the driveway talk, since David would not let Heil into the house. I have a question with that. He was probably there and was probably talking and probably in the driveway. But where do we get this not let into the house? And once again, is that true? Is that a factual statement, or is that something that was inserted? Continuing on, David, quote, David had physically and mentally changed according to Mitchell, end quote. Booth continued, his physical appearance looked frail and he wasn't talking like the David that Mitchell knew, end quote. Here we go. Now, instead of fragile, it's frail. And his physical appearance And he throws in mentally he changed. So whether Mitch Heil was involved in this cover-up or not, it certainly leads me to believe that the phrases he's using, if these are indeed true, that he's using the same bullet points as the other guys.
Mm-hmm.
He would not let him into the house. Was that true? Was that not true? Was that inserted? He mentions his physical and mental capacities. Why are these things all said? Answer.
It might actually be true that he didn't let them in the house. Stick with me for a second.
Yep.
David is writing, and he's working very hard on this script. He has changed everything from the 2013 script to this new one. Maybe he doesn't want anybody seeing what he's doing, because it doesn't seem like they know what he has written. And I don't know, maybe that is something. But I'm looking at a photo right now from September 21st, and David doesn't look frail. It's a darker photo. He has paleo in his lap. He's got this huge smile on his face. I really think that they are using frail and fragile as kind of like buzzwords to paint the whole decline story. But you don't see that. Yeah.
But that would lead me to believe that Mitch Heil's in on it if he's using those phrases. Or are you saying that because touch points, bullet points, and catchphrases are one thing, and just actually giving the detective an honest answer is another thing? These guys are using catchwords, catchphrases, which are done on purpose. Is Mitch Heil involved or included in the cover-up, or is he just helping solidify that, you know what, in his mind, David looked goofy and he probably did do all this? Maybe this did happen, and it was a coincidence that he used the word frail. That's what I'm getting at.
But two of them using that word. That sounds like they matched their stories up.
Yeah, it seems too coincidental to me to be just off the cuff statements. It seems like Mitch is helping and assisting when the detectives talk to him, that he's planting the seed that goes along with everyone else in the Gray State. So whether he was compromised or talked to or whatever, it sounds like to me that he's going along with what he's supposed to say with the catchwords and catchphrases. Now,
or did the detective say, did he look frail? Did he look fragile? Has he lost weight? And Mitch was like, yeah, I guess he kind of looked frail.
That I would agree with if the question was leading, as far as a leading question after talking to Dan Crowley, Danny August Mason. He's frail, he's lost weight. And if he asked those same leading questions and he just answered, yeah, sounds good, then they could put it in the report by saying he looked frail, and it helps the report on the police detective side to beef up their story that David did. You're right.
Yep.
I think it's interesting that they used, mentally, not only physical, now he's going mental as well, and frail rather than fragile. Didn't let him in the house. Now, my question is this. He sent them the request to sign the paperwork over. He did it. That could have been done on a printout, signed in a date, scan it into your scanner as a PDF file, and send it on back email. There's no reason for this to be hand-delivered, did it? Is that why he was there? Do we know why he was actually there? He just needed a response on email. He didn't need to physically hand him over the sheet, drive to David's house, and talk on the driveway. Catch what I'm
Well, the thing is David says on the 21st, the BX is mostly gone. Mitch and I are amicable. He signed his release, which was the biggest thing of all. He signed his release on the 21st. Why was Mitch over there on the 26th discussing this?
24th? Good question. Now, there may have been with all this equipment that he may have had, here, let's split this up. I'll take this, you take that, and we'll sell the rest. That kind of a deal. And he physically came over to physically pick something up, and maybe he emailed the response. My question is, if he was open and he didn't come inside the house, the garage was open, all his stuff was probably there. Maybe he backed up his car, loaded everything up in the garage, and maybe he didn't even ask to go in. But somehow we get the phrase, would not let him into the house. And my question is, who inserted that? The police to beef up the story? Mitch to beef up his story? Or was it true? Hey, can I come in? No, I won't let you in. I have a hard time believing that, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is all based on what the cops say. We're not getting direct quotes from Mitch Heil. That's why we always wanted to have some of those quotes later on from him to see, okay, well, what did he say about this? But these are all summaries from what the police say. That's why, Dan, I know you have actually asked them to say, hey, can we get some of these recordings, some of the actual recordings, so that we can get our facts straight? Right.
The audio recordings are on the server there for the Apple Valley Police for this case. We should be able to, a FOIA request, get those recordings. We can't get them.
Do we have to sue? Do we have to sue?
Wouldn't that be nice
those?
to get, just to see how that conversation went? Now, then I wouldn't want one or two. I'd want them all. And I think that's why they're saying no, because they know that we're going to send in requests for 85.
Oh,
But it would be
they
interesting
literally
to hear
said no.
the tone of these. And you can tell, I think we'd be able to pick up then, is why I don't think they're letting that out, is if their detectives are honestly doing their job, or if you could tell by like the three of us listening to the recordings of those interviews, were they leading questions? Were they going down a path that they didn't really care? They already knew the answer, that they were forced from higher ups to shut this case down. Could we pick up on vibes like that where they didn't take much interest, or were they trying to do the best they could? I think we'd pick up on some of that hearing the audio. If they were legitimately doing their job, asking good questions, what their interview process was like. I don't know. I think it'd be very helpful to have that, just to get the tone on all these, right, wrong, or indifferent, just to get, how did that play out? So that's Mitch Heil. It said in the next paragraph, it says the breakup was not surprising, considering that in late 2012, Mitch Heil broke away from the Gray State Project. So that was 2012. We're here now doing an interview with police in 2015 with Mitch. He goes over at the end of 2014 in the fall to get this last equipment. We know that in that 2013 year, David did change. He now has a contract. He's now moving to a web series or a TV series or a internet series. He has a contract. Things are all in place. Most of his posts in the month of September on Facebook and social media is David Crowley is on a cloud nine. He's on almost a manic. Things are going so well. But the interview with police of his close buddies, all we hear about is how bad he looks and how bad he's acting and what a jackass he is. That's what causes the disconnect for me. September, he's on cloud nine, talking about some of the best things in his life are happening. But yet the interviews with these people are saying that he looks like a meth head. That's where the disconnect is. And that's why it's important for these podcasts like this and books like yours, Greg, to break down the detail, because it isn't consistent with what was actually happening. Going on, it says Mitch Heil broke away from Gray State. David was taking the project in a different direction than the trailer. The movie was so far away from the concept trailer, end quote. Mitch said. Detective Booth wrote that after talking to Heil, quote, it started going heavily into the conspiracy of killing people, end quote.
Okay, time out on that one.
So
he's referring to the 2013 script, because the 2014 script is not filled with conspiracies and is not as dark as what is being referred to here. This is why I do not think that the Gray State guys knew what David was writing. And so they're trying to blame everything on that 2013 script. saying that David went down this dark path and he got lost in his writing and everything. Well, yeah, he was writing, but it wasn't dark. It was more like Red Dawn-ish kind of.
Drama.
Yeah, fighting the NWO, the elites. More action than it was conspiracy and dark. So I don't know. I mean, it's
And so
but he does.
that is true. You know, the movie was so far different than the trailer, the concept trailer.
Mhm.
All this stuff was happening. Now we know from talking and listening to Mitch Heil on different interviews and on different shows, he himself, Mitch Heil, is not an awake person. He's not, familiar with what's going on behind the scenes in the real world. He looks at this stuff as a crackpot. This is all conspiracy stuff, So we know that as a fact that he's not awake anyway. So he would look at these various scripts and say, whatever, I don't believe it, but I'll help you out if you need some help, you whack job. He doesn't buy into any of this stuff. Danny Mason now, Sean Wright, and some of these other guys are what I would call awake people that know what's going on. They're trying to, wake people up with their documentaries and things like this. Federal Reserve, things like that. They are guys that are awake, whether I like them personally or not. They're awake. Mitch
And
Heil
I could see that.
never was anything close to that. He was clueless on the big picture stuff.
And I can see that straining their friendship
Yep.
a lot. So
Awesome. Well, that may be a great place to end this one here. Got about 1 minute left. So, any final thoughts?
No,
There's so much here in this.
Yeah, there's
chapter
so
we
much
haven't
here. I think the
even-
Mitch Heil stuff is good. They broke away. They broke off to save the friendship. Broke up, left the business. But he does throw in there that he's heavily into conspiracy of killing people. It's one more jab to the that feeds in this one more seed to the police that the guy's a nutcase.
Right.
And so it's hard to tell if he's doing it on purpose or he's actually believes it, or these talking points coincidental, or did the detective write the talking points into his report to help beef it up? So when they turn in the reports to the lead investigator, Sergeant Gummert, he can read them all and say, wow, this David Crowley's nuts. We got two things going on here. We got the people pushing the issue, and we got the police and the detectives pushing their agenda to quickly close this case and say that he did it to make it all go away. Were they both involved together with the cover up, or are they both running their separate cover up operations? That's what's interesting to me, I guess.
I always assumed that Mitch Heil and David were working together up until that fall. And now it's saying that they broke up, not surprising considering that in late 2012, Mitch Heil broke away from the Gray State Project. Were they no longer working with Hothead at all?
Well, there's two businesses that they had. So maybe one wrapped up in 2012 and the other one they kept going after that. I don't know, but it was Bullet Exchange and Hothead Productions was the two that they were involved with. I don't know the end dates on those. Sophia, you probably would have more information than I even would. But
I'm looking at the videos, and the last ones that were filmed were 9 years ago. So 2013? Is that about right?
Yep.
So then I guess David just broke away to work strictly on the 2013 script and 2014 script for Gray State.
I'm guessing. I don't know. I think they just drifted and fell apart when the conspiracy stuff. It's hard to have those friendship or relationships with people that don't align with your thinking. As we all know firsthand, it's you got to either shut that off or you got to be friends on a topical level. But once folks find out that you're into the stuff that we're into and trying to wake people up, it is off-putting to those who are asleep. They don't know. They can't even grasp. They just think that you're off your rocker. And so that's, I think, what Mitch Heil. I think they just slowly parted ways.
Does Mitch Heil still have ownership of those two YouTube channels, the BX and Hothead?
Greg, do you know?
No, nope. I'm sorry. Nope. I don't think he does. I don't think he wants it. It sounds like Mitch Heil doesn't want anything to do with this project, anything to do with all of this stuff. I wish that Mitch Heil would at least look at some of the facts, read my book if he is a reader, but at least look at some of these facts that prove that your friend did not do this thing. He did not do this. That's all that we are asking Mitch Heil to do. We're not asking him to agree with whatever theory or anything like that. But man, come on, this is your friend, this is your fellow soldier, this is your business partner, and you're not going to spend time to look into why he is innocent?
He's a smart guy. Mitch Heil's a smart guy. He could he could read this book in an afternoon, I'm sure, and hopefully it could sink in. But he could be one guy that maybe could turn this around if he could turn that corner.
Yeah. It's simple. When I talked to Mason Hendricks, he basically said that they were throwing things at Mitch Heil, and Mitch Heil was just he's not interested in it. So I think he's more open to it, and maybe as time goes by, maybe he'll be more open to it. But Mitch Heil is not, from my view, he's not a part of the Gray State Goons. He is he doesn't agree with us, he doesn't agree with them, and the more pressure they put on him, the more he kind of leans towards us, just dude, let's just look at what happened. What are the facts that prove that your friend did this? And I just really think the more that we can, he may be someone who is more open to it.
He'd be another one to the invitation's open. If he
it's
ever
open.
wants to jump forward and say, hey, I'd like to communicate and maybe do a one-time interview or something, more than happy for any of us to talk with Mitch Heil. I'd love to get his story, his take on this. But anyone associated with this case, it's very easy to reach out and reach any one of us. Mitch would be a good guy, I think, to get down the road.
I actually looked at comments that Mitch Heil had left under another one of David's friends who was talking about David, and he has bought the official narrative hook, line, and sinker.
He's bought it?
And he's bought it.
Oh, bought it. Okay.
And it's really sad because I had hope that we would be able to talk to him. This was 2 years ago that I was reading through it, the whole comment section. And I wasn't shocked. I was so disappointed by the words that he was saying. And I don't know if Mason Hendricks and Sean Wright actually just worked on him enough and told him enough to convince him or what, but at that time he truly believed that David did this heinous act and was a jerk and everything.
And unfortunately, a lot of other people do. There's a lot of people out there that do it. We're just hoping to wake up some people with podcasts like this, read the book, understand some of the details. There's a lot to digest.
The fall of Gray State. The fall of Gray State did not happen when David died. Gray State fell when those who worked alongside of David took the project and tried to make it their own. Gray State fell when those associated with the social media pages claimed David was guilty within weeks, if not days, of the bodies being found. This is long before the DNA ballistics, electronic records, and financial records all prove there was no evidence of their friend's guilt. The team simply jumped the gun and concluded David was a child killer, a wife killer, and a coward who committed suicide. That is the fall of the Gray State. Buried truth in a shallow grave. Grab your shovel and keep digging. On the surface, we were told David Crowley was guilty of a double murder-suicide. We were told the case was closed, that David was the perpetrator, and the public was not in any danger. We wanted to believe them. But what they told us was not the truth. The more we began to dig for the truth, the more truth we found buried under the surface.
I really hope that Mitch will at least pick up our book collaboration when it's finally out
Yeah.
and read all the inconsistencies and sees that there is a different side to the story, because maybe he doesn't know about the actual facts. Maybe he has heard just whatever they wanted to tell him so that he would buy the narrative. Honestly, I think you should reach out to him. I would love for it to be after the book comes out so he could read it, hopefully, and see that there's a different side to the story. You know, between the blood spatter, between the DNA, the AT&T calls, or the calls that never happened that people said that did. You know, hopefully, maybe he will see that the official narrative is not what really happened. That's what I'm excited about with this book, is that people will finally get to see how we lay out the facts. And it's not in an hour-long video. It is actually in written form, and we reference everything. So, I mean, it's hard to dispute the facts once it's referenced against the reports and actual books and journals and stuff. But that's what I'm really hoping for. Anyway, because I'm not the most eloquent speaker, but at least I could get it down on paper. Yeah, I don't think that. No, I actually, after seeing the DNA, I do not believe that the government killed David. The DNA rules out unknown people, unrelated people, but it doesn't rule out the related individuals.
Right.
And the wording that they use is very curious. And once people read that chapter, I hope that they will see that the possibility of somebody coming into the house that was known to David and Camille very well could have killed them. But once they read the blood spatter chapter, that's where the convincing comes in.
Right.
Because that actually shows that the official narrative is completely wrong.
Thanks, Greg, and thanks, Sophia. We'll see you guys next time.
Hello, everyone. This is Sophia from the Gray Stage Podcast, and I'd like to invite all of our listeners to join the Justice for David Crowley and Family group located on Facebook, where we have over 4,000 members. In this group, we welcome discussions regarding the case and have all the documents located in the file section for everyone to review. If you like, you are welcome to visit Greg Fernandez's website called The Gray Stage, which is located at thegraystagewordpress.com. You can find his book and all of the official documents for this case at his website. Lastly, I'd like to introduce you to my friend, Catherine Michelle. Her YouTube channel is called Catherine Michelle Investigates David Crowley. Please feel free to stop by her channel and give her a like and a listen. Until our next podcast, keep seeking the truth and justice for David Crowley and his family.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Ross from Planet X Filmworks channel on YouTube and the Zodiac Files True Crime series. Check it out, and shout out to Greg and the Gray Stage channel. Their content is amazing.
Are you interested in the paranormal, murder mysteries, cryptocurrency, and thought-provoking interviews? Then check out Crypt Rick's I've Been Thinking on YouTube, or every Monday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Studio A at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Welcome to the Crypt.
A simple truth. It really is this simple. Either you believe David Crowley is innocent or you believe he is guilty. If you believe David Crowley is guilty, you are wrong. If you believe David Crowley is innocent, you are right. It really is that simple. A United States Army veteran is dead. His wife and his 5-year-old daughter are dead. A thorough investigation would only conclude with authorities admitting they lacked evidence to support their accusations. If authorities were to admit the case remains unsolved, they would also have to admit that the public may still be in danger. I am not able to solve this case. My interest is in forcing authorities to admit David Crowley is innocent. The reason they refuse to talk about this case is not because they are confident of David's guilt. They lack confidence in their allegations. Their department wishes to move on, but they are only lying to themselves. They must know the simple truth, and they need to publicly admit this. Their credibility depends on it now. The unspoken truth is that David is innocent until proven guilty. Why are authorities running from this simple truth? How long do they think they can run for? You cannot run from God. You cannot run from your nightmares, and you cannot run from the facts. Why would anyone want to? What could possibly motivate someone to try? If you cannot prove David Crowley guilty, then he remains innocent. It's as simple as that. So the resistance we face is disgusting. If David was guilty, the evidence would be right in our faces. If David was guilty, resistance to our questions would not exist. If David was guilty, facts would be evident. There are no facts to prove David guilty. There are only facts which prove David innocent. Hence the resistance to getting justice for David Crowley and family. Who cares? Do the people who closed this case and decided to not speak about it ever again really care? Do the friends who accused David Crowley of being guilty days after his body was found really care? Perhaps they only care about spreading the accusations of David's guilt instead of researching the facts of this case. They don't seem to care about the facts which prove David innocent. Truth is a simple thing. Justice does not die. Facts prove David is innocent. Here we go. Shadows and light. I have lived in darkness, I have lived in the shadows. Now I live in the light of Jesus Christ. He is the light. We can be shadows of that light, or shadows running from the light. We have free will. Do we run to Jesus, run to the light? Or do we run from Jesus and run into the shadows? Do we shine or do we hide? Many people do not have a relationship with Jesus Christ. But it is never too late. We are forever reminded of the thief on the cross. The story is simple. The options are two. The choice is yours to make. At any time in your life, you can believe in Jesus Christ and build a relationship with him. The thief, at the very end of his life, as he was crucified next to Jesus Christ, believed and was saved. The same thief, while others mocked Jesus, asked for forgiveness and recognized Christ was the Son of God. The thief recognized his own punishment as just and also knew Jesus did not deserve what was about to happen to him. A second thief who was crucified next to Jesus said, "If you are the Christ, save yourself and us." The first thief, the one who believed in Jesus, replied, "Do you not even fear God, seeing you are under the same condemnation? And we indeed justly, for we receive the due reward of our deeds. But this man has done nothing wrong." Then the thief who believed in Christ turned to Jesus and asked, "Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom." Jesus answered, "Assuredly, I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise." Luke chapter 23, verses 39 to 43. Wouldn't you like to know more about the thief who believed in Jesus and why he said what he said? Disbelievers will always find an excuse to not believe in the Bible. The various translations of the word are a common excuse used by many people who just do not want to believe in the Bible. But let's think about this. Various translations can be used by the devil to confuse people and turn them away from Jesus Christ. That is the devil's goal. The devil tempts us with such doubts on purpose and as planned. Yet the light still shines through the doubt as planned. The translations and our views on the translations are all part of the plan. This is the test which brings us the same choice as the two thieves crucified next to Jesus. One chose to believe, the other did not. In the end, the choice is yours. You can believe in Jesus Christ and accept the free gift of salvation, or you can choose not to. You can live in the light. You can live in the darkness, or remain in the shadows. The choice is always yours. So are the consequences and blessings of your decision. With Jesus Christ, you are truly alive. Without Jesus Christ, you are truly dead. One.
Hello, my name is Dan Hennon. Welcome to another podcast of The Gray Stage, podcast regarding the book The Gray Stage, written by Greg Fernandez Jr. It's available on PDF and also on softcover. Joining us today is Sophia and Greg, and myself. We'll be discussing chapter 16 in the book, chapter 16. And really, this is episode, Greg, it's episode number 38 for The Gray Stage, part number 7. It's on one. We'll be starting today on page 161 in the soft cover book, which is part of chapter 16 in the book. Very good, highly recommended book. Not because we're pushing book sales to Greg to become wealthy. He's offering the book for free on PDF. This is a book that's intended to garner attention and for people to read as a research tool. No one's making money off the sales of this book. So we're not pitching it, but it's very good. It's the only book out there on the case and the best one available. Once again, we'll be covering chapter 16. It's a long chapter. We'll be going through, I'll be reading it, narrating it essentially paragraph by paragraph, and then we'll have commentary from Sophia, Greg, and myself in between. Any questions, guys?
Sounds like a plan. And you said what page in the physical book?
161 I'll be reading from. 161.
Excellent. Try to have that.
And once again, if anything comes up on these books, feel free to leave a comment, ask a question. We do follow it after these podcasts are published, and sometimes things come up that we may have missed or may have overlooked. All right. So beginning really on this third paragraph down, page 161, it begins in Greg's book. On September 26th, 2014, Danny Mason sent David a one-page response about signing the, quote, certificate of employment and release. Quote, before I can sign any sort of release concerning Gray State LLC, Danny Mason wrote to David, I request in exchange that you sign documentation allowing me complete access and control to Gray State, the Rise LLC. You have stated many times before, this project is of no interest to you. I would like to continue work on this project with Robert Hoyt and produce a finished project for our fans. I request that you sign over ownership of the LLC and sign a similar waiver and release of claims that you are now requesting of me. End quote. There's a lot there. I think we go through one more paragraph here, guys. It goes on continuing. Danny Mason made it clear he was hesitant to sign the release for a handful of reasons. Quote, most importantly, he wrote Mason, because I have dedicated 4 years to Gray State. I have been intimately involved in the creating, casting, development, production, and marketing of the project to this point. I've invested my time and energy, often at the expense of my job and financial security, with the understanding that eventually I would receive compensation. Though I have received nominal compensation, Danny Mason continued, I believe that I am rightfully entitled to 10% of the gross revenue of whatever may be generated from Gray State moving forward. I would request that documentation be executed prior to me releasing any other claims or rights I have. I hope you will understand and appreciate where I am coming from, and we can get this resolved quickly, end quote. Well, where do you want to start here, folks?
Didn't Mason Hendricks say that Robert Hoyt was Danny Mason?
Oh, good question. I don't know. Greg?
I don't remember that. I do remember we were able to find who Robert Hoyt is. I believe there is some, it may have even been posted in the group too about who he is. And I believe his name is listed. It may be on the Gray State press kit too, but Robert Hoyt's name, I believe, has come up a couple of times. So that's all that I know about it.
And before we get to that, for the listeners just joining in here, there was this contractor or contractual obligation or this attorney legalese that Mitch Heil had to sign over, which he did. And the other person was Danny August Mason, which received this legalese documentation signing over the rights. In fact, you could look at it almost as a contract. David sent requested a form to Danny August Mason, almost as a contract, offering him to sign it. Now, with in business law or legal or attorney speak, there's really three things that can happen with that. David Crowley sent this on behalf of his attorney, or send it to Danny August Mason. Someone receiving something like this has three options. You can choose to sign it or agree to it. You can choose to not sign it or disagree with it, or you have the option to counter offer, make a counter offer in return, which is neither saying yes or saying no, but it's countering with a new contract. Now, that's what Danny August Mason is doing here. He's countering. So before you can counter, and what he did here in writing, he didn't do this by himself. This has attorney written all over it. Someone helped him craft this letter that wrote back. So he did put a lot of time into it. He did put some thought into it. He talked with his attorneys. He got this contract in August to sign, sometime in August. I'm not sure if it was the beginning or the end, but he got it in August. Nothing happened. And finally in September, we get this response from Danny Mason that could have easily been sent from his attorney. And Danny Mason could have been CC'd or copied on it. But he just did a reply on the email and says, here's my answer. The words he used, the word execute, getting to this as quick as possible. In the time I've spent doing this, the evidence that he says that, David, you yourself had said you have little interest in this project. So he's throwing out facts to support his piece. He's just not saying, hey, how about you sign this and we call it good. We put a lot of time into this. He spent 4 years. So this is 2014, which means 2010, Danny August Mason has begun putting time and energy, essentially blood, sweat, and tears into this project. Now it's 4 years later, and you're getting something sent from your boss or your coworker, your partner, essentially saying, I want you to, sign off that you have nothing to do with this. So of course he's not going to like that or appreciate that.
Yeah.
So he says, how about, you give me the rights to the other thing. The other project, for the newer listeners, is a documentary, not called The Gray State, but it was called Gray State: The Rise. Gray State: The Rise is a documentary, 90 minutes or something to that effect. It's very good documentary, of course, talking about things that are going on in real life. Not a fictional film, but a documentary. And so he's basically saying, we'll swap it over. I'm not leaving here with nothing, is what Danny August Mason was saying. You're not going to cut me out. Give me something in return, and I'll think about doing this. And so that's fair enough. Everything he's saying here, I think, is fair. Danny August.
But how much work, how much effort did Danny August Mason put into The Rise? When you look at it, that all looks like a David Crowley project. So why?
That's a good point. Sean Wright really babysat The Rise. David Crowley did most of the work. So to your point, I don't know what on this documentary. The documentary is basically getting interviews of people, setting up the sound, the light, the studios, getting it on recording, and then putting all these pieces together into documentation format for a documentary. So Danny August Mason doesn't have skills and background in any one of those things. His is acting. His is coming up with the scripts and doing take 1, take 2, take 3. So I don't know if he has anything like that. So to clarify, my point is what he's offering is fair as far as from a legal standpoint. You can make that offer, but what you're saying, Greg, is that it's not accurate. He didn't do all those things. He doesn't get those things. I also agree with that. That's not a fair play to say. It's not even. So David Crowley's job then is to get the answer, and then to either counter that, or he himself now has the option to say, yes, I'll agree to those terms. No, I will not agree to those terms, or I'll come back with a counter to counteroffer your original offer. Now, anything that he does, any action that he takes, makes the very original offer void and null. If he says, yes, I'll agree to your counteroffer, or no, I'll agree to your counteroffer, or yes, I'll make another brand new counteroffer, it eliminates the first one. He never responds. He never answers. So this counter offer is off the table. It's never dealt with. So we only have the original one sitting out there that Danny August Mason never gave an answer to. He just gave this counter. And so that's what's out there. David Crowley and Danny August Mason did everything on the movie, the film. They did all the work. Now, there's only one thing here before we get to the next paragraph. Or Sophia has a point. When I mean they did everything, was they were the major points of casting, doing the script, doing the takes, getting the lighting, the audio, all these pieces done. Danny August Mason says that clearly. Here's all the things that I've done. This, the marketing, the business, all the things. The very things he told the detectives that he had nothing to do with the project. So this right here could be a quote. This evidence could go back to Apple Valley detectives and to say, when you asked him straightforward, what role did you have in the movie, not the documentary, not The Rise, just the film. He said, I'm nothing more than an actor. Nothing more than an actor is his exact words, on his words, not ours, that he told detectives. Now he's saying that I did creating, I did the casting, development, production, marketing. I did all these things. He's a business. He has a stake. He's talking a 10% stake for what he's doing. 10%, I guess, is for what all the stuff that he's did is probably fair for what he did, which means he lied to detectives as far as what your role is. So that's why this very first paragraph of this episode today is huge, because it tells so much. Danny August Mason says in October, I believe, and November, and even early December, he says, I can't answer you, David, on your request because I need to talk with my attorney first. Remember when he said that?
Yeah.
He goes, I can't answer. I got to run it past my attorney. Well, September 30th, he obviously ran it by his attorney because we've already got the answers of what the attorney said. So he was in communication with his attorney from the beginning. So Danny August Mason keeps burying himself every step of the way with lies, half-truths, and things that are not legit. Sophia, did you have a question?
No, I just have a point.
Okay, go ahead.
Mason Hendricks texts Greg on March 8th, but I'm not sure of the year. Danny Mason or Robert Hoyt, that's right. He spells his name that way. You're not annoying. If you really want to F with Danny, just ask him how much of the Gray State that he owned. If I remember correctly, David gifted him 10%. The amount of dirt on Danny that Sean and I have is comical. He considers himself a master. JKD, that Bruce Lee shit that has never been in a fight. He thinks he is a militia man and that he could be in the military, but fell and bumped his knee once and complained the whole time that and wouldn't film. He's a phony.
So what Sophia said there is the Robert Hoyt side, which is the documentary Gray State, The Rise, that he wants to take over and get. Basically, he's just offering a swap. I'll do this and go with it. You do that and go with it. And so wants to get it done for the fans. He's simply requesting that you sign over ownership of the LLC and a similar waiver. He's signing over the business now in this case. The LLC, which is a limited partnership, limited liability corporation. Sign it all over to me. Well, that's pretty huge request. Give me the business. Now, we know that after not wanting to release it, Sean Wright did end up releasing it officially after he had time to edit it and clean it up and make it his own. He released it and was hoping to charge and make money to do it because he got nothing out of that either. That was released on the soon afterwards by the individual who went rogue and released it. Greg, remember that?
Yes.
The individual's name, but that was all relating to Gray State, The Rise, and that's that documentary. But
yeah, and that was not Danny August Mason, but Mason Hendricks and Sean Wright were actually both part of that post-death project.
Yeah, and during before the death, these guys, meaning the project guys, were thinking they were going to make money off the project, the movie project or the web series, the documentary project, and they all were going to have a windfall of cash.
Right.
Now they get the movie going down the line saying, please sign off because I'm going to take this and run with it myself. And so you can see Mason is jockeying for position. Danny August Mason, he's jockeying here.
Yeah, and the other thing about that date is it's a very important date. September 26, 2014 is the same day, I believe. It could have been September 30th.
Oh, 26th, sorry.
Was it? Yeah, no, but I'm trying to think of the day that David Crowley went and spent a couple hours on Facebook answering questions.
We're getting to that. It's coming.
So that must be later.
That is on the 30th.
Okay,
which
I thought
ties back to this whole thing on the 26th is a very good point because Danny August Mason, now per his attorney or by him personally, is how he's kind of purporting it to be, is here's what I want. I'm doing this in return. I'm a big player here. I got my chips in the game. I'm a big stake player. Here's what I want. Here's are my demands.
Yeah.
And it kind of backfires because David Crowley says, hey, wait a minute. I'm the one calling the shots here, not you guys, not any of you guys.
And just one more thing about what Sophia read there is because this was some of the first time that I really understood that there are factions, there are Gray State teams, there are factions within this thing. These guys aren't even supposed to be part of the Gray State team at this
before
point.
Or after the deaths.
It's really hard. Definitely after, because
sure.
Yeah, definitely after. But I don't know how far back this whole teams went, where you have Sean Wright and Mason Hendricks on one side, you have Danny August Mason and